Okay, we should be live. Welcome to 8 Gaming again. We are back. I have uploaded parts 13 to 19 on YouTube, so check that out. Should probably put that in the description of Twitch. But here we go. So last stream I spoke about the request to just show all of the skills, so we will do that. I'll make a little YouTube video of it. Let's get rid of that. And collect this apple for no reason at all. Okay, so this is, on my run of my Pyromancer / Greatsword / Geomancy guy. As you can see, these are the skills I'm running with right now. I have a couple to pick up, and going for this Greatsword one later for the crit chance, just to see how it works with spells. But let's go through the full breakdown. So what you need to know for the skills is that you can actually find them wherever, generally in dungeons, bookcases, like in the crypts. A good place to find them. The bookshelves are generally next to, not the first floor, but one floor down on the second floor, right next to the boss. They'll have bookshelves. You can find skill books over there. Otherwise, you can purchase them, at least in the beta here. Up this guy, Odar. So if you trade with him, he's got these. So you have Pyro 1, 2, 3, which gets you pretty close, but not all of them. Same thing for Geomantic. And then you've got the Mace, the Greatsword, ranged weapons, which is essentially like bow, staves, dagger, shield, sword, and axe. And you can buy your map, and generally, if the icon doesn't look like it's made mostly of metal and it's just like amethyst or something like that, sell it to this guy. You'll get more money for it. But going into the skills, well, skills and the whatever you want to call it. I mean, I would call these spells or talents or whichever, but yeah, you have all of these attributes as well. So we'll go over these. Okay, let's start with swords. So sword, you have honed blades, passives. You have to have a one-handed sword. So you have the sword's condition deteriorates 50% slower if the equipped sword's durability is 80% or more. So that's pretty cool. And 10% extra weapon damage, and most of these all have passive bonuses and or synergies. So you'll see like -1% fumble chance or cooldown duration for the skill tree, that sort of thing. I'm going to skip over the passive bonuses and just focus on the main effects of the skills. So we have Cleave, which is, it performs an attack which hits 3 adjacent tiles. It does 20% damage with 70% bleed chance. Provides a 10% counter chance for 4 turns for each enemy hit. So that's pretty good. Yeah, for 4 turns, that's pretty useful. I mean, 10% counter chance, especially if you get some skills, or armor rather. You can get that up to 25%, and it'll be quite often. And then here's a passive. Each sword strike grants 3% bleed chance for 4 turns, and it stacks. So that's pretty cool. Keeping distance retreats a tile back if the next turn the empty tile is occupied by an enemy. Perform an attack with 30% damage and 80% bleed chance. Oh, that's pretty sweet. And advance. Rush toward the enemy and strike with bonus 33% damage and 50% armor penetration. I wonder if that's just one tile or like all the way to the person within that range of 3. That's pretty cool. The target receives 33%, negative 33% bleed resistance and 10% damage taken for 4 turns. And then you have these that are locked for me anyway. Gloat. Sword attacks have a 5% crit chance for each bleeding applied to a target. And killing a bleeding enemy decreases cooldown duration of the skill tree, the entire skill tree, by 50%. Going down, we've got Fencer's Stance. Activates the following effect for 4 turns. 10% block chance, 15% counter chance, and 5% less skill energy cost. Which is pretty cool. Each hit you deliver to an enemy prolongs this effect by 1 turn, and grants 1 instance of the effect, up to 4 stacks. Dang. You could pair this Fencer's Stance with a shield, because it only requires a one-handed sword. You could get 4 stacks of this, so 40% block chance, and then I think the shield has a 80% block chance skill as well, so invulnerable essentially. Melee attacks, that's pretty cool. Stamina training passive. Sword attacks have 15% chance to restore 4% of your max energy. This is pretty common for a lot of the trees, like a 4% chance to gain energy, max energy, passive or something. A lot of them have this kind of skill in them so that you don't run out of mana when you're trying to cast and play the game, essentially. Alright, so let's go to axes. So we've got Mutilating Lunge. Rush towards the target and strike with 133% body part damage and 40% bleed chance. If this attack failed to apply injury, decrease the cooldown of this skill by 60%. Axes seem pretty hardcore, honestly. And then we have Reprisal. Which is a passive, each instance of injury affecting the target grants 5% accuracy and 3% crit chance. So looks like it just stacks injury with axes here. Then the other passive, we've got applying injury reduces cooldown duration for the skill tree by 1 turn. Cool, and then Cut Through delivers a strike with 33% damage and 33% armor penetration and 125% armor damage. Each instance of injury on the target empowers the strike for 33% damage. Yeah, that armor damage is actually pretty cool. You could actually break all of their armor before they die. Really good for fighting heavily armored opponents, and then break all their armor and they're just like casters at that point, and then you can rip them to shreds. So that's pretty cool. Tormenting Swings passive. Critical strikes with axes apply negative 20% bleed resistance for 4 turns. Makes you more effective there. And then Execution, performs a strike which does 1.3% damage for each missing percent of an enemy's health. Each instance of injury affecting the target empowers a strike with 10% crit chance and 15% crit efficiency. Each instance of bleeding on the target empowers a strike with 4% crit chance. If this strike kills the target, reduces the cooldown duration for this tree 50%. Seeing a lot of that on the axe, like if you kill them or if you injure them or whichever, you get cooldown reduction or something. That's cool. And then Massacre activates the following effect for 4 turns. 25% more body part damage, plus 5% armor penetration, and 15% more bleed chance. Each successful hit prolongs this effect duration by 1 turn and grants an extra instance of it up to 4 stacks. Common with some other ones there. Attacking enemies, excuse me, show no mercy. Attacking enemies with less than 33% health deals 20% more damage. That's just a straight up awesome skill right there. That's cool. So that's axes and swords so far on the weapons. Let's go to maces. This is one I've tried. I like it though. It seems to add daze and not stun like I was thinking. Daze kind of, it stuns them so they can't cast skills or spells or whichever. It doesn't actually stun them, so they can still auto attack you. But pretty good, very good against people, NPCs who cast a lot of skills and spells. Definitely spellcasters. So we have Onslaught to start out with. Delivers a strike which burns 15% of the target's energy and has a 75% chance to inflict knockback. So that is like a crazy good thing against casters. If the first strike successfully knockbacks the enemy, if the strike successfully knocks back the enemy, I guess, the attacker advances and delivers an extra attack with negative 80% damage and plus 75% daze chance. If you fail to knock back the target, the cooldown is reduced by 80%. I've used that. That's pretty good. You want to do this against someone against a wall, and then it'll for sure stun them, which is good. And then Dazing Strikes, passive. Attacks with maces have a plus 5% daze chance. Just straight up bonus there, which is good. Break armor against high armor targets is great. Performs an attack with plus 45% armor penetration, and then you see that plus 125% armor damage again, similar to the axe skill that we saw earlier. If the enemy is dazed, grants plus 25% armor damage for each remaining turn of the daze. If the enemy is stunned, grants plus 125% armor damage for each remaining turn of the stun. So it depends on what's happening there, and applies the enemy with a plus 10% damage taken for 3 turns, I think they meant to say there, and a negative 30% stun resistance for 3 turns. Going down, Moment of Weakness, passive. Enemies stunned by maces take 15% more damage while they are stunned. That's awesome. And then Respite. Passive, a successful stun with a mace hit replenishes 5% of max energy. Yeah, I wonder if that's like if you stun them right away or if you hit them, knock them back, and then stun them. I wonder if that counts or not. And then you have this, Hammer and Anvil. Activates the following effect for 4 turns. Yeah, it looks like this one can stack up to 4 times. Prolongs it by 1 turn if it's successful, that sort of thing. So you get plus 40% armor damage, plus 15% daze chance, and plus 5% accuracy on that one. So yeah, that's crazy. Finish off. Delivers a strike with plus 33% damage. If enemy is dazed, adds plus 12% damage for each remaining turn of daze and prolongs it by 4 turns. If enemy is stunned, adds plus 80% damage for each remaining turn of stun and prolongs it by 1 turn. Puts all enemy abilities on cooldown. Doesn't say how long of a cooldown, but I guess it just sets it to its longest cooldown. So it doesn't set them all on a 1 second cooldown, but their own internal cooldown as if they were just used, I would assume. And then Concussion, passive. Each mace strike applies a negative 5% stun resistance for 4 turns. This effect stacks. Cool. I have yet to try daggers and the whole stealth mechanic, so I'm not sure if you can actually sneak up behind people very often or how that works. But let's go through this one. Of water. Okay. So we've got double jab. Requires a dagger, of course. Delivers 2 strikes with plus 25% damage and plus 40% bleed chance. If both strikes connect, cooldown is reduced by 50%. That's cool. And bleed is a pain in the butt if you are surrounded by a bunch of people, because you have to decide between casting a spell that's going to protect you, kill someone so there's less damage coming in, getting away, or whichever, or bandaging the bleed, which is causing you to take damage. So, from the shadow, passive, attacks against unaware enemies gain plus 25% damage and plus 10% accuracy. Unaware, yeah. So I'd assume you could just sneak around and attack people from behind. That's cool, like a little backstab. Deadly Trick. Deliver a strike with plus 20% damage and plus 50% crit chance. Burns energy for the amount of damage dealt. Wow. You swap places with the enemy and immobilize them for 3 turns. The attacker also gets plus 100% dodge chance for the next turn. If it's 3 turns, I wonder if you could get behind them, do the deadly trick, move away, switch weapons, shoot them with a bow, switch weapons again, get like a free hit, and avoid the dodge chance of the turn after. Be a cool strat. And then Quick Hands, passive. If your second loadout holds a dagger, switching to it doesn't end your turn. That's cool. Dagger kills decrease cooldown duration for this skill tree by 1 turn. Sweet. Gaping Wound. Delivers a strike with 33% armor penetration and plus 80% bleed chance and plus 125% body part damage. If the enemy is injured or bleeding, applies Gaping Wound for 8 turns. I'm not sure what Gaping Wound is. I would assume it's like more bleed damage or something. Plus 20% ability energy cost. Using abilities has a 50% chance to open bleeding. Dang. Okay. Painful Stabs. Activates the following effect for 4 turns. Plus 20% body part damage, plus 15% crit effectiveness, which means if you crit, you do more damage. And then plus 20% bleed chance, plus 5% crit chance as well. The same thing with a lot of those, so successful attack prolongs it by 1 and grants an extra instance of it up to 4, so it stacks. Dealing critical damage prolongs the effect by 3 turns, but resets the number of instances to 1. So it's like a balance measure there. Here's a passive, Weakening Jabs. Successful attacks with daggers apply plus 3% damage taken and plus 5%. Oh, there's a typo, you see that? And plus 5% cooldown duration for 5 turns. This effect stacks. That's cool. Coup de Grace delivers a strike with plus 1.5% armor penetration and plus 3% damage for each remaining turn of bleeding on the enemy and each missing percent of enemy health. If this attack kills the target, it doesn't end turn. What? Wow. I was wondering if they're going to throw that mechanic, like you get to take 2 turns opposed to everyone else around you, or yeah, something like this. I didn't know a skill like this existed. Doesn't end turn. That's pretty cool. Counterattack Mastery, passive. Attacking with daggers grants you a plus 4% counter chance for 5 turns. This effect stacks. Then we have this one. The main one is a passive, which is Dance of Death. Critical strikes with daggers have a plus 10% life drain. Wow. That's pretty cool. It'd be a fun build. Here's Greatswords, which I'll be going into soon. So, Feint Swing. Targeted enemy has their dodge, counter, and block chance set to 0. This requires a Greatsword, of course, being Greatswords. And after that, deliver a strike with plus 20% accuracy and negative 10% damage. Yeah, Heroic Charge sucks when someone else has it and you're a caster and they come straight up on you. That's why I like Geo, you can knock these guys around. But, so here's Heroic Charge. Rushes towards the target to deliver a strike. Each traveled tile adds plus 15% damage and plus 5% crit chance. Over here, Courage passive instantly refreshes the cooldown of Heroic Charge if it manages to kill its target. The ability range is increased by 1 tile. That's pretty good. And then Recklessness passive. Each adjacent enemy grants 3% crit chance. Requires a Greatsword, and that's it. So that's what I like about this game. I don't know if they thought about it or not this way, but I can get rid of my staff that I have, put on a Greatsword, and then this applies to the spells. So I get a bunch of enemies surrounding me, and then all of a sudden I'm critting all of them all the time. And then we've got this skill. Activates the following effect for 4 turns, plus 50% block chance, and plus 30% block power. While the effect is active, each block strike is considered countered. Cool. Steel Feast. This is one I really want. Activates the following effect for 4 turns, plus 100% crit chance, plus 10% accuracy, but you do 20% less damage and 20% less crit effectiveness. Killing enemies prolongs this effect for 2 turns, so it should be able to kill, and keep this thing going. As long as you kill them each with like 1 or 2 attacks. And then Revanche. While Repose is active, each successful block grants negative 15% ability cooldown for the next turn. That's cool. And Arc Cleave delivers a strike with plus 20% damage and plus 125% bleed chance to 5 adjacent enemies. Reduces cooldown duration for the skill tree by 1 turn for each enemy hit. 5 adjacent enemies. That's pretty cool. Just a range of 1 of everyone around you. And then we have Fight to Death. Passive. Steel Feast also reduces cooldown duration for the skill tree by 1 turn for each enemy killed. Man, that's pretty cool. And then Taste of Victory passive. When you kill enemies with this skill tree's abilities, you replenish 5% of your max energy. Awesome. Ooh. I don't usually talk that much. That's a lot for me. Okay. Ranged weapons. This is one I want to try out as well. A lot of skills in this one. So, taking aim requires a bow and arrows, grants plus 50% accuracy and plus 10% damage for the next turn. Yeah, that plus 50% accuracy is awesome when you think about the fact that the bow has an inherent, like this is the best bow you can get in the beta, and the accuracy is negative 20%. And you'll have like negative 30% on some other bows. So you just have this built-in chance with the bow that you're going to miss. So it's good that the skill adds that in. So then you have this constant training passive. Taking aim also grants plus 7.5% crit chance and negative 10% fumble chance. Long range shot. Takes a shot with plus 50% extra range. Wow. That bow already adds plus 4 range, and some other skills add range on top of that, so that's craziness. And then for each tile traveled, the arrow gains plus 7.5% damage and plus 5% armor penetration and plus 12.5% body part damage. Really big on the body part damage with the bow here, it looks like. Like body part damage and armor penetration. Distracting shot. Increases dodge chance up to 100%. Lets you retreat up to 2 tiles away. After that, you take a shot with 25% less damage and 25% less accuracy at the enemy who is closest to you, to your original location. It's a nice getaway kind of thing. Precision, passive. Increases the duration of taking aim by 2 turns. And that's the accuracy and damage that they add. That's almost a requirement. I would take it. And then suppression activates the following effect for 6 turns. 15% less cooldown duration, 20% more knockback chance, and 7.5% less skills energy cost. Each successful attack prolongs the duration of the effect by 2 turns and grants an extra instance of this effect up to 4 stacks. Hunter's Mark. Marks the target enemy with the following effect for 10 turns. Shooting at the target grants 15% more damage and 10% bleed chance for the following shot. This effect stacks. The cooldown's 15. Wow. That's pretty cool. It's more and more and more until they're dead, huh? Okay. Pierce through missile. Takes a shot which pierces all targets on its path. This attack has a 80% more bleed chance, 35% more armor penetration, and 75% more armor damage. Thrift. Passive. Your bolts and arrows break after shots 15% less often. Again, not sure how often that happens, so I'm not sure how good that is. Each successful shot applies negative 5% piercing resistance for 3 turns. And that stacks. Stacking passives are always good. Just attacking, so don't have to take note of it after you take it. And then headshot takes a shot which is guaranteed to hit an enemy in its head. This attack gains 150% more body part damage, 33% more crit chance, and 50% more crit efficiency. If this ability kills an enemy, cooldown duration for the skill tree gets upper hand, passive. Distracting shot, long range shot, headshot, and pierce through missile reduce cooldown duration for the skill tree by 1 turn if they kill an enemy. That's a cool little build they've got set up there. That sounds like a lot of fun. Yeah, see how it has way more skills than, say, like shields. Or even Pyromancy. It's filled out, but it's not as filled out. I feel like ranged weapons require the most skills to invest in. That's what, 1, 2, 3, 4 missing spots versus 1. Well, it's shifted, kind of weird. There would be 1 right here. You shift those up. Maybe it's about the same. It's just shifted funny. Okay, shields. Ray shield. Activates the following effect for 2 turns. This is what I was talking about earlier. 80% more block chance, 20% more block power. So chance to block is pretty obvious. It's your chance to block. And then your block power is like how much damage can you block? Like white melee damage, I think. So if your block chance is 100%, you'll block it. But if your block power is like -1, you'll take 1 damage. Or if your block power is 5 and they attack you with 10 damage, you're blocking half that. You're blocking the 5 damage. Shield Bash. Performs a Shield Bash, dealing 10 crushing damage. Has a 75% chance to daze for 3 turns. If the bash doesn't daze... Sorry, I was just looking real quick, make sure I wasn't doing this whole video and I had like something over the skills where you couldn't see it. So if the bash doesn't daze, reduces shield bash and raise shield cooldowns by 3 turns. There's another typo right there. That should be an S, and that / probably shouldn't be there. Okay, and then Moment of Retribution, passive. Taking unblocked damage reduces cooldown duration for the skill tree by 1 turn. That's actually very useful. Surprise Onrush, passive. Performing a successful melee block has 10% chance to shield bash the attacker. Let's see, going on to Defensive Stance. Activates the following effect for 4 turns. 15% more block power, 10% chance to counter, 5% less damage taken, and 12% more fortitude. Each attack you receive prolongs the duration of this effect by 1 turn and grants an extra instance of it up to 4 stacks. That's a lot of block power and counter chance. So Breakthrough is the next one. Shield bashes all enemies on 3 adjacent tiles. So 3 tiles in front of you in a line, and dealing 8 crushing damage. Has a 75% chance to inflict knockback to all enemies. Reduces cooldown duration for this skill tree by 2 for each enemy you knock back with the skill. Yeah, they put knockbacked again. It's kind of weird to read it like that. For each enemy you knocked backed with the skill. Yeah, that's weird. Ultimate Resilience, passive. Each fully blocked attack replenishes 3% of your max energy. Cool. And then if your current, Last Bastion, passive. If your current health is less than 33%, each attack you receive has a chance to activate Raise Shield. Each missing percent of health increases the chance by 1%. Nice. Yeah, this game is nuts, man. A lot of cool builds in here, and you don't necessarily have to like pick a warrior class and only have like a sword and board. Like I said, I'm going Pyromancer, fire build, caster, but then I'm gonna go Greatsword, which will be cool. Okay, so we got one more weapon left. Staves and Halo Blows. Strikes 2 times with 45% less damage. The first attack has plus 75% more energy drain. The second attack has 75% more daze chance. If both attacks connect, strikes for the 3rd time. If both attacks connect, it strikes for the 3rd time with 45% less damage and 80% knockback chance. So that's cool. They both connect, you get a knockback, most likely. And then Destabilizing Hits passive. Attacks with staves, which knock back enemies, apply 10% damage taken for 2 turns. That's cool. And then Battle Trance passive. Critical strikes with staves reduce cooldown duration for the skills tree's abilities by 1 turn. I like those. Anything that reduces the duration of the skill tree cooldown or whichever, so you can cast more. Helps when you're surrounded by a bunch of people. Step aside. Charges toward the target and then hits all adjacent enemies with 25% more damage and 80% knockback chains. That's pretty cool. Reduce cooldown duration for the skill tree by 1 for each knockback enemy. Also good. Unwavering stance. Activates the following effect for 4 turns. We're seeing a pattern here, like where they have a couple actives and they have a couple like activate, so you get a bonus, and then that sort of thing. So this is 5% less damage taken, 10% more fortitude, 15% more block chance, and 25% more block power. Each successful attack prolongs this effect by 1 turn and grants an extra instance of this effect, up to 4 stacks. Peacemaker hits all surrounding enemies with 10% less damage and 75% daze chance, and then retreats to a chosen tile without triggering attacks of opportunity. I'm assuming that means they can't hit you as you're going past them. Grants 10% less ability energy cost for 5 turns for each enemy hit. Now or never passive. Successful blocking with stabs grants 33% counter chance for the next turn. This effect stacks. That's pretty good, actually. Nothing like a good counter chance or counter strike of like 100 or something. Really save your butt. Triumph. Passive. Killing enemies with stabs grants 10% magic power for 9 turns. That's good. If you're a caster, you got a staff, someone comes on you and you kill him with your staff and you get more magic power. That's not bad. So that's all the weapons. The basic skills aren't really fleshed out and can't really see what any of these are. But so weapons that we haven't gone over because they're grayed out. So we got great axes, great mauls, which would be cool, pole arms, be cool, and wands. That's probably what I'll take a look at first. Yeah, we got basic skills. Right now they give you detect traps and backstab passive. Attacks on unaware targets always crit. So that's cool. I wonder if that spells too. A lot of stuff there that's not filled out. And then you have armor, basic skills, dual wielding, medicine, alchemy, sabotage, survival. I'm interested to see what survival is. Magic mastery would be nice to know what that is. Combat mastery, athletics, that'd be cool to know what that is. And then we have, I'll read all these off first before I go through it. I got pyromancy for the spells and or sorcery. Electromancy, venomancy, cryomancy, geomancy, astromancy, chronomancy, which chronos, right? Time. I wonder what that does. And then Psimancy of the mind, and Arcanistics, arcane energy, and whichever. So let's go over Pyromancy, which is what I've chosen because I'm like a Harry Potter wizard wannabe, and or like Gandalf for X-Men or whichever. I like magic and sci-fi tech and stuff. So Pyromancy, Fire Barrage, lunges a flurry of 3 firebolts at the target, each dealing 14 fire damage. So all these numbers are going to be fully geared out or whichever. So your initial damage is going to be lower. Like it might even be like 5 fire damage, but I'll keep reading this. And then each firebolt deals 30% more damage to burning targets. I like this one. It's your bread and butter. It's up every 3 cooldown, 3 turns or whichever. And then that morphs into Feed the Flames. When a bolt, Feed the Flames is a passive. So when a bolt from Fire Barrage connects with a burning enemy, the duration of burning is prolonged by a turn. So I think you can inflict burning from each hit from the 3 firebolts that come out from Fire Barrage, which is good. And then you can just increase the amount of burning which you can then use to do more damage, because this one, I think ignition, igniting, and burning are the same thing. So if you have like 8 stacks or 8 turns worth of burning, this thing will do more damage. There's some other skills that tie into that. But then you have a flame ring, just a ring around you. Ignites surrounding tiles, dealing 19 fire damage to enemies. Has a 125% chance to ignite all affected targets and applies 31% less fire resistance for them. So that's really good if you're surrounded. Cast that, reduce their fire resistance, and then start casting all the other stuff. Or you can reduce your fire resistance with this, and then cast this thing. Which, if you pick up this, then there's even less fire resistance that they've got going on. But this is Blaze. It's your AoE. Deals 28 fire damage to each target in its area of effect, like a cone, and reduces the cooldown duration for the skill tree by 1 for each enemy hit. I actually forgot about that second part there. I should start trying to do that more often. Okay, and then here's the passive that ties into that. Scorch. Targets affected by Blaze gain 15% less fire resistance for 30 turns. So, doesn't stack, but 15% on a 31%. And yeah, you can really stack some negative effects on them, which sometimes you'll need if it's raining, because they gain resistance, like 50% resistance when it's raining outside. So you got to watch out for that when using fire. This one's cool because it's got a pretty long range of 8. Shoots a ray. It's called Melting Ray. It shoots a ray of fire towards the targeted tile. The ray does 9 fire damage to each enemy it passes through in a line, with a 104% chance to ignite them for 2 to 3 turns. When reaching the targeted tile, there's an AoE around where you choose the destination. The ray explodes in a small area, delivering 24 fire damage to all enemies hit. The more enemies the ray passes through, the more damage it does. So, pretty cool in there. Very it's situational as far as the extra damage, but the base damage, it's good. You can cast it just like normal. And then you've got this one, Baptism of Fire. If you yourself take fire damage, it reduces the cooldown duration for spells of this skill tree and reduces the duration of current negative effects. So if you're affected by like poison, go step in some fire and then it'll actually help you out, which is weird. Cool though. The higher the damage, the more powerful the effect. And then Flame Saturation, passive. Replenishes 4% of max energy each time an enemy within your vision ignites. So that's like attack them with Fire Barrage. If one of the 3 or all of them of the bolts cause someone to ignite, then you get 4% of your max energy. So that's cool. And it's not just this one, it's like anything, anytime they ignite with anything. Here's Incineration, a single target, range of 8. Extinguishes a burning enemy, causing a violent explosion in a small area. The explosion does 26 fire damage, with the chance to ignite each affected target for 2 to 4 turns. The more turns remained of the extinguished burning, the higher the damage and igniting chance. So that's pretty cool. You kind of gotta figure out internally, like, how many ignition, like how long the cooldown, or how many stacks of ignite they have on them, whether you're going to use that or not, how much damage it does. And then you have Magma Rain. Rains magma over a small area. It's a 3x3 area, dealing 14 fire damage and setting some of the tiles on fire. Leaves a puddle of magma for 10 turns. Standing in the magma deals 5 fire damage with 5% chance to ignite, and applies 6% less fire resistance each turn for everyone in that. Yeah, So that's a puddle of magma for 10 turns, and that'll reduce their fire resistance while they're in it. So you've got Magma Rain, Flame Ring, and you've got the Scorch with the Blaze spell tied in. Can all reduce their fire resistances. And then you have Safe Distance, increase the range of Pyromancy spells by 1 tile, which is very useful when you're trying not to get hit, and allows you to cast more before they get up on you. Heat Absorption replenishes 5% of maximum energy for each enemy killed with all pyromantic spells, which is awesome. Never run out of mana. Can't get that yet in the beta, unfortunately. And then Inferno active summons a firestorm over a large area. Standing in the area of effect of Inferno deals 21 fire damage each turn. It says the range is 5, but I'm not sure like how big of an area it is. And then does increase damage for each enemy in the area of effect. And then this last one, Pyromania passive. Each burning enemy within your vision grants you 3% magic power and 3% more crit chance, which is cool. That stacks depending on how many you've burned. So it's pretty cool. They mix up the words like each burning enemy, each ignited enemy, each whichever. So kind of hard to tell. I'm not sure if they're interchangeable or what. Okay, so then, yeah, the last one here, Geomancy. I've only taken the first 2 because honestly, they are crazy useful. So I don't know why you would never take this one. Runic Boulder has a really long range of 12. Raises a runic boulder and a targeted tile. Deals 6 arcane damage to all affected enemies with a 104% chance to inflict knockback. If you knock them back into a solid object like a tree, a root, wall, or whichever, it'll stun them for like 2 turns or something. Three turns. Oh, no, I was reading into that wrong. Yeah, it's like 2 turns if you stun them. So each runic boulder within your vision provides your character with an instance of runic empowerment. So 10% more magic power, 10% more energy restoration, and then 10% less damage taken and 10% ability cooldown. That stacks 3 times if you have 3 boulders out. Boulder's durability depends on the caster's max energy. If a boulder is destroyed, the caster is stunned for 3 turns. That's what I was thinking of there. You can't have more than 3 boulders simultaneously. If you do, the first one will get destroyed and it'll spawn a new one. I really like that one because you can set it up to where you can just knock back and stun everyone. It's your best defensive spell and your like options in your deck. Yeah, I use this one all the time. And then Stone Armor activates the following effect for 5 turns. 33% more physical resistance, 75% more nature resistance, 25% more magic resistance, and 100% more bleeding resistance, and 50% more knockback resistance. So these effects don't stack, but the duration does. So at the end of its duration, the stone armor explodes, dealing 2 crushing damage for each attack it absorbed, with a chance to inflict knockback on all adjacent enemies. Each instance of runic empowerment prolongs this effect duration for 5 turns. Raising new boulders prolongs this effect for 4 turns. So eventually it's like infinite if you have the mana to cast and cast more runic boulders and stuff. But you can also time the knockback. And yeah, that's a pretty good one. Rune of Enfeeblement, passive. Enemies standing next to a runic boulder suffer 10% less physical resistance and 10% less stun resistance. And then I'm not too familiar with the rest of these. So Rune of Binding, passive. Raises a runic boulder, grants 10% less abilities energy cost for the next turn. And then, man, I'm losing my voice just from this. And then stone spikes, destroys a targeted runic boulder, summoning stone spikes on each adjacent tile. Spikes deal 22% piercing and 4% crushing damage with an 89% chance of knockback. Affected tiles without enemies maintain their spikes for 20 turns. Their durability depends on the caster's max energy. That's pretty cool. And then petrification is kind of like a get out of here, last resort sort of thing. So it deals 12% damage to all enemies in the area of effect with a 74% chance to petrify them for 4 to 5 turns. So you can stun them, stun and or petrify for 4 to 5 turns and get out of there. Or if there's a big group, you can petrify them and focus on the other guys, which is good. Each petrified enemy within you vision, should be your vision, provides you with 15% more geomantic damage. And then Rune of Absorption for each enemy hit with stone spikes. Cooldown durations for the skill tree are decreased by 1 turn. Cooldown durations for the skill tree altogether are decreased. It's actually pretty good. Earthquake destroys a targeted runic boulder, creating an earthquake over a large area for 8 turns. Wonder what large is, 3x3 or 4x4. Deals 3 crushing damage to all targets in the R. I think that should be arc. Yeah, or area in the area of effect. Burns 13% of the enemy's max energy per turn. Has a 15% chance to daze for 3 turns. Applies a negative 5% chance stun. Applies a negative 5% stun resistance and negative 10% knockback resistance. That's pretty cool. Burns 13% of enemies' max energy per turn. It's crazy. Good thing it's not PvP. Improves max durability of runic boulders and stone spikes by 50%. Increases base duration of stone armor and crushing damage dealt by stone spikes. That's good. Boulder toss. Rips a targeted boulder from the ground and tosses it towards the targeted tile. The toss deals 33% crushing damage and 5 arcane damage. When it hits, the boulder has a 74% chance to knock back the target and has a 37% chance to apply stun or daze. Damage dealt, knockback distance, and stun or daze duration depends on the distance of the toss. Assuming, what, the farther away the better? It doesn't really say, huh? And then Runic Explosion destroys a targeted runic boulder, provoking a violent explosion. Deals 30% arcane damage and 6 crushing damage to all targets in the area of effect. Has a 74% chance to knock back and a 74% chance to stun. Replenishes 5% of max energy for each enemy killed. And Rune of Destabilization, passive. All enemies within Earthquake suffer 5% more damage taken and 10% more fumble chance. That makes sense. Rune of Sustention, passive. Killing enemies replenishes 25% of all your runic boulders' durability and grants 20% less ability energy cost for the next turn. 25% of all your runic boulders' ability or durability. Wow, that's cool. So you don't get stunned for 3 turns because your boulder dies. or is destroyed. That's cool. And then Runic Explosion, the Rune of Cycle passive. Runic Explosion decreases the cooldown durations for the skill tree by 20% for each enemy hit. Runic Explosion. Wow, so that's it. Those are all the skills and or spells or whichever. So we can go over this real quick, or slowly, whichever. So strength influences your primary combat capabilities, governs your melee damage, crit efficiency, block chance, and block power, as well as body part damage and armor damage. And then you have agility. Agility influences your finesse in combat. It governs your dodge chance, counter chance, crit chance, fumble chance, stealth, and also your lock picking and disarming. Perception. Perception allows you to spot danger earlier and helps you deliver precise attacks. It governs your range and damage with ranged weapons, accuracy, crit chance, stealth, and vision. Vitality. Vitality influences your survivability and endurance. It governs your max health and health restoration, max energy and energy restoration, as well as healing efficiency and your immunity. Willpower. Willpower influences your magic capabilities. It governs your magic power, resistances to magic and pain, your fortitude, as well as your abilities, energy costs, and cooldown durations. Yeah, you got all your body parts here, you got your hunger. I'll just let you guys read this. I don't want to read off all this. I'm just going to mouse over slowly and you guys can pause it if you really want to look at it. So you got your hunger, your thirst, you've got toxicity, your pain, and your immunity. Mine's always been really high, my immunity. Not sure what's up with that. You got your morale and your sanity, and then any symptoms that you have. And then there are a lot of combat stats, so I'll mouse over so you can see the tooltip, and then I'll just go down. So, got damage, weapon damage, body part damage, armor damage, armor penetration, accuracy, crit chance, crit efficiency, counter chance, fumble chance, and then we'll scroll down a little bit. Got your skill energy cost, your spells energy cost, your cooldown duration, your bonus range, your bleed chance, daze chance, stun chance, knockback chance, life drain, energy drain, received experience, and then under survival instead of combat, you've got your health restoration, your healing efficiency, your energy restoration, your protection, your block chance, your block power, your dodge chance, stealth, noise produced, lock picking and disarming, vision, and then fortitude, damage reflection, bleed resistance, stun resistance, knockback resistance, hunger resistance, toxicity resistance, and pain resistance. And then damage resistance. We've got damage taken, got physical resistance, your nature, magic, slashing, piercing, crushing. I don't know what rending is. And then you have fire, poison, frost, shock, caustic, arcane, sacred, unholy, and psionic. And then for magic, you've got your magic power, pyromantic, geomantic, venomantic, cryomantic, electromantic, arcanistic, astromantic, psionic, and chronomantic. Oof. There we go. We got through all of it. And then I'll mouse over some of the man. These are simple arrows. I wonder if they'll ever increase the different kind of arrows. This is one of the better bows. I just haven't repaired it. And these are the kind of stats that you can obtain. And then in blue, those are the enchants that I've added to the weapons. So this is a caster. I went full cloth, no defense. I've enchanted energy on pretty much all of these. These aren't too hard to find in the dungeon. When you give you like an example of what you'd see on each item and all that. I went for energy, just it's fun to be able to cast like, without thinking about mana. But you could definitely do something else with that. I don't think I'm missing anything, right? I think that's pretty good overview of everything.